Somewhere in the deep past, a man scraped the hair from his face for the very first time, with no razor, no mirror, no soap, nothing but a sharpened piece of stone and a reason we are still piecing together. It is one of the strangest habits our species ever picked up, and one of the oldest. Long before the smooth-shaven kings of Egypt, before the clean-faced soldiers of the ancient world, prehistoric humans were already removing their beards, with flint, with shells, with slivers of volcanic glass. The question is why? Why would a Stone Age human endure, dragging a sharp edge across his own face, in a world with no comfort and endless danger? Stay with me, because the answer isn't what you'd guess, and it takes us on a journey from the raw survival of the Stone Age all the way to the thrones of the ancient world. Let's start with why this is such a strange thing to do in the first place, because once you really see it, you can't unsee it. A beard is free. It grows on its own, costs you nothing, and in a cold world, it even keeps your face warm. To remove it, on the other hand, takes effort and tools and real risk. You are dragging a sharp edge across the soft, delicate skin of your own face and throat, the most vulnerable place on your whole body, where a slip means blood, and in the ancient world, a cut could mean a deadly infection. Nature gave men a beard for free, and some of them looked at that free thing and decided, no, I am going to go through pain and danger and effort to take it off. That is a genuinely bizarre choice. Animals don't do this. No other creature on Earth removes its own hair on purpose, so when the first humans started doing it, something powerful must have been driving them. And to understand what, we have to go back to the very beginning, to a time long before kings and razors, when the reason to shave wasn't beauty at all. It was staying alive. Picture that first shave, because it must have taken real nerve. A man kneels by a still pool at dawn, and in the blurred reflection, he sees the thick hair covering his face. In his hand is a flake of stone, napped to an edge, the same kind of edge used to butcher an animal or scrape a hide. There is no soap to soften the hair, no oil, no mirror to guide his hand, no one who has done this before to show him how. There is just the edge and his own skin, and whatever reason is driving him, he sets the stone against his cheek and pulls, and it pulls the hair with it, and it stings, and maybe it nicks him and draws a bead of blood. He winces and adjusts and tries again, learning stroke by careful stroke how to drag a blade across his own face without opening it. By the time he is done, his face is raw, maybe bleeding in a spot or two, but bare smooth changed. He has just done something no animal has ever done, and few humans before him had ever tried. And whatever pushed him to do it must have been worth every sting, because he, and others like him, kept doing it until scraping the hair from your face became one of the most enduring habits our species would ever have. Because the first men to remove their beards almost certainly weren't doing it to look good. They were doing it to survive. And the first reason is one that will make your skin crawl: parasites. In the ancient world, a thick beard wasn't just hair, it was a habitat. A warm, dense, sheltered forest growing right on your face, and it made the perfect home for the tiny things that plagued human life: lice, fleas, mites, and all the biting, itching, disease-carrying creatures that thrived in human hair. And those parasites were not just an annoyance. They spread sickness. In a world with no soap, no medicine, no way to truly get clean, a beard could become a nest of infestation that itched and bit and spread disease through a whole group. So imagine the man who scrapes his beard off and suddenly finds relief. No more nest, no more constant biting. One less place for the parasites to hide. He would have felt the difference immediately. Removing the beard removed the habitat, and that was a real tangible improvement in a person's daily life and health. This alone was reason enough for the practice to take hold and spread. The smooth face was, quite literally, the cleaner and healthier one, and it is worth understanding just how relentless this problem was. Because it is hard for us to imagine today. In the ancient world, there was no real escape from these tiny tormentors. They lived in your hair, your clothes, your bedding, and they spread from person to person the moment people came close, which, in a group huddled together for warmth and safety, was constantly. The itching was ceaseless, the bites became sores, and some of these parasites carried diseases that could sweep through a whole community, sickening and even killing. Hair was their kingdom, and the denser the hair, the better they thrived, and few places on the body offered a richer, warmer, more sheltered territory than a thick beard right in the middle of the face, closed to the mouth and eyes and nose. So a man who removed his beard was doing something genuinely powerful for his health. He was burning down the forest the parasites lived in. He was denying them their best hiding place, right at the center of his face. In a world where you couldn't wash the pests away, Cutting off their habitat was one of the only weapons you had. And the razor, crude as it was, became a tool of hygiene and health long before anyone had the words for either. And if this is already changing how you think about that daily shave, if you're seeing it not as grooming but as one of humanity's oldest health habits, then do me one favor. Tap that subscribe button right now. This channel is for people who want the real story of where we came from, not the cartoon version. The people who want the surprising truth hidden inside the most ordinary things. You belong here. Now stay with me, because parasites were only the first of the survival reasons. Because a beard in the ancient world could get you killed in a much more direct way. Think about what happens in a fight, hand to hand, desperate life or death. The kind of struggle our ancestors faced against rivals and enemies. Now picture a thick beard in that fight. It is a handle, something for an enemy's hand to grab, to seize, to yank your head back and expose your throat, to control your whole body by the hair on your face. A beard gave your opponent something to hold on to, and in a close, brutal struggle, that could be the difference between winning and dying. A clean-shaven face gave an enemy nothing to grip. Feel how that plays out in the moment. Two men locked together, grappling in the dirt, each fighting for his life. Onin has a thick beard, the other is barefaced. The barefaced man's hand shoots up, finds the beard, and closes on it. And suddenly, he has control. He wrenches the head back by that fistful of hair, and the bearded man's throat is exposed, his balance gone, his whole body forced to follow his head wherever it is dragged. In one motion, the beard has turned from a warm covering into a leash. Now reverse it, two barefaced men grappling, and there is nothing to grab, no purchase. Each hand slides off smooth skin and finds no grip. In a world where these desperate close quarters struggles decided who lived and who died, that difference was enormous. A beard was, quite literally, a weakness an enemy could seize, and the men who removed it removed that weakness. There is an old tradition that this exact logic is why one of history's greatest commanders ordered his soldiers to shave, so that in the chaos of battle, no enemy could grab them by the beard. Whether or not that specific story is exactly true, the underlying principle is real and was understood in the ancient world. Hair is a handle, and in a fight, a handle can kill you. For a warrior, a smooth face wasn't about looking clean. It was about giving the enemy one less way to end you. And there was a third survival reason, one that mattered enormously in the coldest parts of the ancient world. It seems backwards at first, because a beard keeps you warm, and it does. But in bitter, freezing cold, a beard has a hidden danger. Your breath and any moisture freezes in the hair. Ice builds up in the beard against the skin. And ice held against your face in extreme cold can damage the flesh, contributing to frostbite on the very skin the beard was supposed to protect. In the harshest frozen environments, some peoples found that a bare face, kept dry, could actually be safer than a beard turned into a mask of ice. So even against the cold, the one thing a beard seems obviously good for, there were situations where removing it was the wiser survival choice. You can picture it in the extreme cold of an Ice Age winter. A man breathes out, over and over, all day long, and every breath carries moisture that settles into the hair around his mouth and freezes there. By midday, his beard is stiff with ice, a frozen crust pressed against his lips and cheeks and chin. That ice doesn't warm him. It holds a biting cold directly against the most delicate skin on his face, and where cold sits against flesh for long enough, the flesh begins to die. The beard that was meant to protect him has become a trap, a mask of ice slowly damaging the very skin beneath it. A bare face, by contrast, could be kept dry, cold be covered and uncovered as needed, cold avoid becoming that frozen crust. It is a genuinely counterintuitive thing, that in the coldest places on Earth, shaving could sometimes be the warmer, safer choice. But it shows just how much careful, hard-won knowledge our ancestors had about their own bodies and the world that was trying to kill them. So look at what we have: parasites, a fighting handle, and frostbite, three real, deadly, practical problems, and shaving solved all of them. This is the origin of shaving, and it has nothing to do with vanity. It was survival technology, one of the many clever hard-won adaptations our ancestors used to stay alive, carried out with the sharpest tools they had: flint blades, the edges of shells, and slivers of obsidian, that volcanic glass that can be knapped into an edge sharper than surgical steel. The first razors were stone, and the first reason to shave was simply to live a little longer. And think about the skill in those first tools, because it is easy to picture something crude and clumsy. It wasn't. A well-knapped flint blade has a genuinely fine edge, and obsidian, volcanic glass, can be worked to an edge so sharp it comes to a point just a few molecules wide, finer than a modern steel blade. Our ancestors were master toolmakers, and the same craft that shaped their hunting blades could shape something keen enough to shave with. Some peoples used clam or mussel shells, whose edges could be used almost like tweezers to pull hairs out, or scraped across the skin to cut them. Others used two flat stones or shells to trap and yank hair out at the root. So there wasn't just one way to remove a beard. There were many invented independently by different peoples, using whatever their land provided, from sharpened stone to shell to bone. The urge to remove the hair was so widespread and so old that humans found a dozen different ways to do it, long before a single piece of metal was ever forged into a razor. That alone tells you how deep and how ancient this drive really was. Because as humans stopped just surviving and began to build villages, then cities, then the first great civilizations, the smooth face stopped being only about survival, and it became something far more powerful. It became about meaning. And nowhere is this clearer than in ancient Egypt, where shaving was raised to an art, an obsession, and a sacred duty all at once. The Egyptians were famous for it. In that hot climate, cleanliness was close to a religion, and body hair was seen as unclean, uncivilized, something to be removed. The Egyptians shaved not just their faces, but often their entire bodies, and they did it with real tools now, razors of copper, and later bronze crafted specifically for the purpose, a huge leap beyond a sharpened stone. A smooth, clean, hairless body was the mark of a civilized Egyptian, and a hairy one was the mark of an outsider, a lower person, someone unclean. And they took this to length that can be hard to imagine. Wealthy Egyptians employed skilled barbers, and the razor became a prized possession. Some were buried with their owners because a fine razor was a valued object to carry into the afterlife. The obsession with a hairless body was tied to the brutal heat and the constant battle against the same parasites that had driven prehistoric shaving. But now it was wrapped in a whole culture of cleanliness, elevated into a marker of what it meant to be a proper civilized person. A man's smoothness announced his rank, his refinement, his distance from the dirt and hair of the common laborer or the foreigner. What had once been a raw survival act, scraping off the nest of the lice, had become a badge of belonging to the highest civilization of its age. The same result, a bare face, now carried an entirely new message. But it went deeper than hygiene. For the priests of Egypt, shaving was a matter of holiness. To be pure enough to serve the gods, to enter the sacred spaces and perform the rituals, a priest had to be clean in a spiritual sense, and that meant removing hair, sometimes from the entire body, to present oneself pure and smooth before the divine. Hair was impurity. A shaved body was a holy one. So here, shaving has transformed completely. It is no longer about lice or frostbite. It is about standing clean before your gods. The same act, scraping hair from skin, now carried a spiritual weight that a Stone Age human could never have imagined. And there was yet another layer in Egypt, status and power. Think about the pharaohs and the famous false beards they wore. Because here is the fascinating twist. The pharaoh's beard was not real. It was a carefully crafted false beard, an ornament, worn strapped to the chin as a symbol of authority and even divinity. The natural face beneath it was shaved smooth, so the beard had become a piece of regalia, like a crown, a symbol you put asterisk on asterisk, precisely because the real hair had been taken asterisk off asterisk. Control over the hair on your face had become control over your image, your status, your very identity, whether you were smooth or bearded, and how now announced exactly who you were. Now stay with me, because this idea that the face is a canvas for identity and power exploded across the ancient world, and different civilizations wrote very different meanings onto it, because the meaning of the beard was never fixed. It flipped from culture to culture, from age to age, and that is the whole point. In some ancient societies, a full beard was the ultimate symbol of wisdom, manhood, and honor. To shave it off was shameful, even an insult, a sign of mourning or disgrace. A philosopher's beard was a badge of his wisdom. To these people, the beard was sacred, and the smooth face was the strange one. A long, well-kept beard could signal that a man had lived, had thought, had earned the right to be listened to, that he was no rash youth but a figure of experience and gravity. Stripping it away, in such a culture, could feel like stripping away a man's dignity itself. But in others, the opposite was true. Among the Romans, for a long stretch of their history, the clean-shaven face became the proper, civilized look, and the first shave of a young man's life became a genuine rite of passage, a ceremony marking his step into manhood, sometimes with the cut hair offered to the gods. In Rome, to be clean-shaven was to be a proper Roman man. A beard could mark you as a foreigner, or a mourner, or someone who had let himself go. And these weren't just fashions. They were deep statements of belonging and belief, and people felt them intensely. In cultures where the beard was sacred, a man's beard could be the pride of his life, a visible sign of his wisdom, his maturity, his standing among other men, and to have it forcibly cut off was one of the gravest humiliations imaginable, an attack on his very identity. Meanwhile, in a culture that prized the smooth face, that same proud beard would mark a man as unkempt, uncivilized, an outsider not to be trusted. A traveler crossing from one land to another might find that the very thing that made him respected at home made him suspect abroad. And the only thing that had changed was which side of a border he stood on. The beard, or its absence, was among the first things anyone saw about you, and it spoke before you did. It could say, "I am one of you," or "I am a stranger." It could say, "I am wise," or "I am barbaric." "I am in mourning," or "I am a man now," all depending on the code of the people reading your face. Humans had turned a patch of hair into a language. Do you see what is happening? The exact same act, shaving or not shaving, mean completely opposite things depending on where and when you lived. In one place, the beard was holy and shaving was shameful. In another, shaving was manhood and the beard was barbaric. The hair itself never changed. What changed was the meaning humans poured into it. And that is the deepest truth in this whole story. The face became a flag, a way of announcing, without a single word, who you were, your people, your status, your beliefs, your manhood. To shave or not to shave was never a small thing. It was a statement about your entire identity, written on the most visible part of your body. So let's finally answer the question we started with. How and why did ancient men start shaving their beards? It happened in two great stages. First, in the deep prehistoric past, they started shaving to *survive*, to escape the parasites nesting in their hair, to deny an enemy a handle in a fight, to avoid the frozen mask of ice. A beard could become in bitter cold. It was practical, clever, hard-won survival technology, carried out with flint and shell and volcanic glass. And then, as humans built civilizations, the smooth face transformed into something else entirely, a symbol of cleanliness, of holiness, of status, of manhood, of belonging. The razor went from a survival tool to a tool of identity, and the human face became a canvas on which every society painted its values. And now let's kill the myth. The idea that shaving is, and always was, just simple grooming, a bit of vanity, a way to look tidy. The truth is so much richer. Shaving is one of the oldest and most meaningful things humans do to their own bodies. It began as a fight to stay alive, and it grew into one of the most powerful symbols we have, a silent language written in hair and skin, speaking of who we are and who we want to be. Every civilization that ever rose had something to say about the beard, because the beard was never just hair. It was a mirror of what that society valued most. So tomorrow morning, when you stand at the mirror and drag a blade across your face, or decide, instead, to let the beard grow, stop for just a second and feel the weight of what you're actually doing. The same act a Stone Age man performed with a sharp stone to escape the lice in his beard. The same act an Egyptian priest performed to stand pure before his gods. The same act a young Roman performed on the day he became a man. That small, ordinary, everyday choice, to shave or not to shave, connects you to hundreds of thousands of years of human beings deciding what their own face should say to the world. It never is, and now you know why. But the beard is only one of the strange things humans do to reshape their own bodies, because across history, in every culture, people have gone much, much further, painting themselves, scarring themselves, reshaping their bodies in astonishing ways, all to send a message no words could carry. So why have humans always felt this deep need to permanently mark and transform their own bodies? That is the story we open next.